Well, Linda sends her apologies. She's got the shingles, so can't be here. But
she's always in trouble, poor Linda.
yeah. Hi, Linda.
I'll get Polly to send her a message.
Yeah. Well, this will be on YouTube, so she can watch it.
Right.
1, 2, 3. Hello, Linda. We asked the other week and asked for some ideas what people would like us to give talks on and subjects you'd like us to cover. So this one was suggested straight back by Alan, so by popular demand. Tonight we have beacons and propagation aids. And he says he's got some more ideas for things he'd like covered as well, but it's not just up for Alan. If you've got any topics that you'd like covered, please submit them. And I'm sure we've got the expertise within the club to even if we don't know them off the cuff, we can easily research them and do some presentations for you. If it's practical, so much the better.
Yeah.
And this one tonight, although it sounds like a dry subject, is actually practical, because you'll pick stuff up tonight that every single one of you that's operational on a band somewhere will be able to take some part of this away and actually play with it, possibly more than one part. And as a test, we're going to attempt to put the slides for this on the website, position yet to be decided. Jim will let us know. So don't go all frantic when I put web page addresses up and stuff. You don't have to write them down or remember them. In a few days or so, you'll be able to look on the website and look them up and find them there and use them. We're going to attempt to look at them live tonight on here. I don't know whether it's going to work or not, but we're going to give it a try. It's an experiment. So, without any further ado, beacons and propagation aids. Well, the best way to start looking at this topic is to look at questions that I know we have all asked at some point, which is things like, how do I know that my aerial's still on my chimney? I can't seem to hear anybody tonight. Maybe it's fell off. Maybe the storm did for it.
Yeah.
Maybe my receiver's gone deaf. Maybe I've blown it up. How can I find a known signal somewhere to check that my frequency display on my ancient transceiver is actually telling me the truth and I'm not actually on a different frequency to what I think I am? How do I know my transmitter's working? Can anyone actually hear me? Because I call CQ till I'm blind and nobody comes back. I just made some changes, tried a new aerial, tweaked something, adjusted a power amplifier or whatever. How do I know if it made a difference? How much of a difference did it make? How can I tell if whatever it is, name your particular favourite band, is open? All common questions that we all ask, I'm sure we have all asked at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that we're going to cover tonight will help you to answer those questions. That's basically what this is all about. So let's look first at the subject of beacons, because that was the one that was asked. What is a beacon? What's it for? A beacon is basically nothing more than a transmitter somewhere that's constantly transmitting. So it's a regular or continuous transmission coming from a known location on a known frequency. And because you've got that, you can tune in your radio, find that beacon on that frequency, listen to how loud it is, whether you can hear it at all, for example. And then if you change something on your aerial, if it improves and it gets louder, you know that you've improved things. If it gets worse, you know you've made it worse. If you can't hear it at all, you know your aerial's probably fallen off or something bad has happened. But it's useful for that kind of thing. Back in the older days, beacons were really critical for aligning your equipment, especially on VHF, UHF, where the only way to get on those bands really was to build something yourself. And I remember sitting in on the build of a 70 centimetres transverter, which took a number of weeks to build, and it was like ultimate sign of progress. I was living in Sheffield at the time, and we managed to actually hear the beacon coming in from Emily Moor, and it was like, there it is, now we know what frequency that's on, so we know where we are, and you know, so it was really useful for things like that. And as you tweak the little things in there, you can use the big beacon as a signal source, tweak it for maximum level and things like that. You can use beacons for evaluating the conditions of bands, what the propagation is like. For example, if you pick a beacon that's quite a long way away from you, that's really scratchy, you can barely receive it, if you habitually tune to that frequency and listen to that beacon, and one night you go on and it's 3 points louder than it normally is, you think, oh, there's a lift on, something's happening. So you may want to go elsewhere on the band and try and work some DX. On HF as well, these beacons are all over the bands. From the HF bands right up until the microwave segment, there are beacons that you can use for this purpose or similar. In the band plans for each band, there's particular little beacon bands set aside for beacons. Usually the CW end of the band is at the bottom, and then there's a little band gap where beacons sit, and then you get the SSB section. So if you're in any doubt, you can't remember, you can't find them, try and find the top of the CW section and listen around there. But that's not very scientific. If you actually want to know where the beacons are, where they're coming from, which ones you might be able to hear from where you live, go and look on the RSGB website. All the UK beacons, so ones based in the UK, are on their listing on their website. There's also links on their website to international worldwide listings of literally hundreds of different beacons on different bands in the HF spectrum in different places. So depending on what the propagation's like, what your setup's like, you can find ones that you can hear, and then you can begin to experiment and play with them. And it's also interesting, you can listen and you can go, I can actually hear this beacon in Venezuela, so I know I've got a path to there. If you can hear a beacon in that country, you should be able to work somebody in that country. Jump up a couple of 20 or 30 kilohertz, grab your mic and start calling and see what you get. So that basically is the long and the short of beacons. That's what they're for. But if you want some homework, your homework is go look up listings on the RSGB website, find some beacons that are probably within range of whatever part of the spectrum or bands you work on. Dial them up, see if you can find them, see if you can hear them. Normally what you'll hear is they send their call sign in Morse. Sometimes they also send their grid reference or locator in Morse, and then they'll just give you a period of carrier, and then they'll just do it again, and they keep transmitting. So good reason to brush up on your CW, and there's a lot more reasons to brush up on your CW coming up shortly as well. So brush up on your CW. If you want to brush up on your CW, see Linda, she'll help you with that. Some particular beacons, let's look at some particular ones on HF. The NCDXF, the Northern California DX Foundation. They have beacons not just in Northern California, but as you can see from the map there, they're all over the world. And they're all synchronized into this NCDXF beacon system. If you go on to, just look that up on Google, NCDXF beacons, you can find their web page. That's the screenshot from their web page. But the important thing about these beacons is every single one of those beacons transmits once on each of the HF bands every 3 minutes. They're all synchronized together by a software system. So no matter what band you're on, you'll have these beacons popping up on the same beacon frequency on the band. So you can listen on that frequency, and you might hear nothing for 2 or 3 minutes, and then you'll hear one. Then you might hear another, then you'll hear nothing else. And what's happening there is these different beacons are transmitting on this 3-minute schedule, so you can listen on one frequency, you can see which parts of the world are open, which bits you can hear, which bits you can't. And there's other cool stuff about these beacons. Let's just look at a bit more detail. Each transmission is the call sign of the beacon sent at 22 words per minute, another good reason to brush up on your CW, followed by 4 1-second dashes. Now this is cool. The call sign on the first dash they send at 100 watts. Then the dashes step down in power. The next one is 10 watts, the next one is 1 watt, and the last one is 100 milliwatts. So as you listen to that beacon, you can hear those dashes getting weaker and weaker until it disappears. So not only have you got an idea of what part of the world you can hear, but how well you can hear it and how well the path is doing. At the end of every 10-second transmission, what happens is that particular beacon will jump up to the next band up on the HF spectrum, and another beacon will start transmitting on that same frequency from a different place. So you get the idea of these continuous rotating beacon system throughout the world, helping you to gauge what propagation is open and when. Slightly more on this. If you want to know the transmission schedule and the frequencies, just look on their website. And if you use the ham clock, there's a really handy ham clock module that you can put on there, one of the little things. It's the top right hand corner. It's actually called NCDXF beacons. If you enable that, not only does it display that in one of the top frames for you and give you the frequencies, but on your world map, colour coded, the beacon that's actually transmitting right now on a particular band, they show up and you can see them moving around the world. So if you're interested, say, in 20 metres and 20 metres happens to be colour coded red, it will show you the red beacon will be hopping around. So if you're listening on that frequency, all you've got to do, if you hear it, is glance at your ham clock and instantly you can see which one it is that you can hear. So for you, those of you that like ham clock, brilliant that, absolutely bonza that is. So that's a particular example of beacons, and there are other beacons. We may look at some more in a bit as well. There's beacons on VHF, there's beacons on 10 gigahertz. So if you're working on microwaves and you've built some contraption and you want to know if it works, in the unlikely event that you're actually within range of one of those beacons and able to get a line of sight to it, you know, or you could go out in your car, perch on a hilltop and listen for this beacon and use it to set your gear up. So beacons are everywhere. There's also beacons that aren't beacons. Think about it. If a beacon is a known transmission on a known frequency from a known place, there are other things that aren't beacons. On VHF or UHF, a really simple technique is to use one of the repeaters. I've got a particular one that I listen to. It barely opens the squelch, and that's a really good indication. If I want to know whether the band is up on its normal place, just listen to that beacon. If it's stronger, things are going good. So use something like that. As long, of course, as the repeater is up, somebody's got to be using it. Stands to reason. There are other useful stations outside the amateur bands. Those of you that have got transceiver with general coverage on it or that can receive outside the bands, great. Look up on the internet the Volmet stations. What those are around the world there's HF stations, and all they do is continuously 24/7 transmit weather reports for aircraft that are doing long distance flights. Classic one I listen to when I'm setting up shortwave sets and stuff.
Navigational.
It is, but it's not. It's actually a voice transmission on SSB, and it's some robotic woman, and she just reads out the weather reports for all these different airports, and then a general forecast, and then goes beep beep or something like that, and then starts again, and it just keeps going and going and going. And when I'm setting up a shortwave radio, you know, messing about with the receiver or something, I'll tune to one of those because it's a great source for aligning. You know, it's a known signal. Shannon Volmet in the Irish Republic. That's a great one. Just above the 80-metre band. Can't remember exactly where it is, but it's just a little bit higher than the top of 80 metres, and you can find that. Broadcast radio stations. Depending on what kind of part of the spectrum you're interested in, again the same sort of rule. Find one that you can barely normally hear, or maybe one that you think you ought to be able to hear if there's good conditions, but you can't currently, and listen for it. You know where they are, you know what frequencies they're on, their schedules are published. If it's stronger than normal or it suddenly pops up, hey, there's a lift on. You know, it's that kind of thing, useful. So have a good think about beacons that aren't beacons as well, and decide what you can do. Because one thing I have noticed is, especially with VHF and UHF, there used to be an awful lot more beacons in the UK than there currently are. As I said, the one at Emley Moor was absolutely stonking. It was great. It was right on top of that concrete tower, and you could hear it like over a third of the UK. Unfortunately, it's gone. So it's not there anymore. And the only ones really that are any good, there's one down south somewhere, but unless you've got a beam on your chimney, we're not going to hear that blinking thing. In fact, when they change the licence conditions, one of the things I think is, why don't we build a damn beacon and put it up somewhere? Have a club beacon. That'd be a great project. And a service to amateur radio users everywhere. But anyway, that's for another talk.
On your roof?
Stick it on my roof if you want. Jim won't be able to hear it though.
No, I'll never hear you.
Right. Okay, so that's beacons. But it can get a bit more sophisticated, a little more interesting, and a damn sight more useful than just listening for a beacon. Let's look at some other interesting things. How about the reverse beacon network? Now this is an interesting thing. Instead of beacons transmitting signals on the band, the reverse beacon network will actually listen for them. So instead of a network of transmitters, this is a network of receivers. Very interesting. And this network of receivers are all connected together, and they'll report what stations they hear, when they hear them, and how well they hear them. This could be very useful. If you go on the Reverse Beacon Network's website, you'll see a map representation of what the beacon network is hearing at any one time. So in near real time, you can put out a quick call and you can see almost at once which beacons worldwide have received your call. Instant answer to that question is, has my aerial fallen off? Is my transmitter working? Even though nobody's responding to my calls, I've got 6 beacons here that can hear my signal. I'm working, it's just everybody else is either down the pub or watching the football or whatever. Sorry?
How did it call your call sign?
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. I'm glad you asked that question, as the politician said.
Interesting one.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
Good, Lawrence.
You can also see, for example, band openings. If you look at the map and suddenly you see all this stuff coming in, it's like the propagation's opening up. You know, so it's useful. We're going to cover that. We're going to attempt to have a look at it as well, if this works. So, for example, that's just the basics of it, but the real breakthrough is that it stores this in a database as well. So you can immediately find out what stations from any given country or zone were heard by the beacon network, at what times, on what frequencies. So if you're chasing DX, you can use it as an aid to let you know what the best frequencies and bands are right now or historically to try and reach a particular location. If you put your own call sign into the search, you can also answer that question: did anybody hear me? How loud? What signal reports did I get? You can do it, you know, and go back on a day later, and as long as you wind the date back, you can still see that data. As we'll come back, that can be extremely useful for many, many different purposes. You want to compare your signal with friends or competitors in some contest or other, you can do that too. There's a signal comparison tool on there. Give it the stations you want to compare, give it the criteria on a certain band at a certain time perhaps, and you actually have real quantifiable data. Numbers, signal reports, times, frequencies. So if you're adjusting your aerial, you're mucking about with it, you want to tell whether it made a difference, hit the reverse beacon network, do your changes, and then hopefully about 5 minutes later, no more, before the propagation's had a chance to shift, make your tweaks and do it again. You'll be able to get a direct comparison of what it did to your signal. Very, very good. Sounds good, doesn't it, this? How does it work? Another good reason to brush up your CW. You need Morse for this. But the good news is most people who use this have modern transceivers that have a keyer memory built in. And what they do is they program the sequence that they need to wake up the RBN into the keyer memory, so you don't even have to have a Morse key connected. You can just hit that, put it into CW mode and go send that, and it will send it, and then you can go on the website and look at what reports you got. So, sorry Linda, you don't need CW for this, but you do. How it works is, I know I've said there 2, 3 or 4 repetitions of your call sign. It depends on the call sign, because what it does, it's got software scanning for this, and depending on the call sign and the prefix is how many repetitions of the call sign it needs to see before it goes, okay, I'm going to record this in the database. So the easiest way to make sure you've got it is to send test, test, G4FZP, G4FZP, yeah, that's one. Send that 4 times at least, and you should be enough to be detected by the RBN. So test a couple of times, or 3 or 4 times, whatever you want. Send your call sign a few times. Just repeat that a little bit. What's happening is it's got lots of 50 hertz decoders right across the band listening for signals, and when it hears the right pattern, it will actually pick that up and go, okay, this is one for me, and it will put it onto the RBN network. 256 characters deep, so it will keep recording it and overlapping, so it's looking for a pattern that's like, it can see your call sign, it's been repeated enough times, and it'll trigger the threshold and it'll record you.
What speed do you have to send it at?
Doesn't actually matter, just any decent speed, but the thing is, you need to send good quality Morse. If you send rubbish Morse and your pauses are different lengths, it might struggle to actually get you. So the best way, if you want to be sure, is actually to program it into your keyer on your rig and just use that to send it, because you know it'll be machine Morse then and it'll be dead right.
Yeah.
It's dead easy though. I mean, it's so easy to program that up. It's something you could go home and you could try this evening, and you could look it up on the reverse beacon network and see where you get heard. You don't even have to do it in one continuous transmission. As long as you stay on the same frequency, so it doesn't confuse the heck out of the thing that's trying to decode it at the other end, you could send a couple of times, you could pause, you could send it again, you could pause. As long as you get enough repetitions in within a reasonable amount of time to stay on the same frequency, it will get you. Let's see if this works.
Now, for it to
Go on.
get you, you're talking about a time limit. What are you talking about? A minute, 2 minutes?
Near real time. So within a minute or so of you having sent it, you should be able to go on the website and see your spots. Let's see if we can actually do this. I don't know whether this is going to work. It's worked because it's come up on my screen but not on this screen. So let's just jump out of here. We'll kill
We'll
the...
use these cheap screens.
It's not that, it's the fact that...
Hey. Yeah, PowerPoint.
Behave! I never behave, don't you know?
we need this to... I'm probably going to have to kill the presentation as well, aren't I now? We can come back into it. Come on, give me the...
There's the world.
I know what
From
this
the moon
is.
now.
It's because I'm going to have to... Alright, bear with me a second. Right. We'll do it the brutal way. Alright. So that is the reverse beacon network live. So each of the little spots are listeners on the beacon network, and it's showing you stuff it can hear. You see it's just changed now, different stations are being heard.
Yeah.
And you can select the band you want, you can select the mode you want, you can select different stuff down here. You can change the call signs that you're looking for. So you'd put yourself in spotted, for example, to see where you've been spotted. You can change stuff around here, how long ago you want to see it from, how many rows you want to see, stuff like that. This is going to be damn difficult, but if I get there, we can scroll down. So it's showing you there the spotted call sign. The spotter is the person with the reverse beacon network receiver, so you know what QTH it was heard at, over what distance, on what frequency, signal to noise ratio, what speed the Morse was, when it was seen by the network. It's just changed again, you see, because it's updating all the time. So it's changing what, every minute? So within a minute you can get signal reports from around the world from your test transmission. So it's pretty good. Pretty good. So there's something you could play with. And the link will be on the PowerPoint, so you don't need to frantically write it down now, but there's just one thing you can do. Now, let me see if I can recover this back to normal state, and then we'll carry on. Get rid of him. Go on, off you
Have
go.
you printed any leaflets out on it?
Website.
Yeah, the PowerPoint slides will be on the website.
Do a special page for them.
Yeah.
Huh?
You're on.
just go back into this. And
All the three might have a nice leaflet to be made.
let's pick up where we left off.
It's really good when you see your own call sign come up on the Beacon network.
Oh yeah, it's very,
You,
very
you know you've been successful.
Yeah. Spent half an hour one day trying to get some. Nobody answering it, but when I picked it up on there, well, people
Yeah.
just ignoring me.
which is what happens sometimes in
Yeah.
amateur radio, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know?
They do ignore calls.
But you know whether it's working or not. Anyway, so that's the reverse beacon network. Here's another interesting one that Lawrence brought up. The Whisper network. This is
Another good one.
sort of halfway house between the two. This is receiving and transmitting at the same time. So Whisper won't hear you unless you're a participant in it. But what it does do is all the Whisper entities that are out there in the world are all sending, and other ones are picking them up, and then they're also listening to see who else they can hear. Now the good thing about this is it's showing you propagation paths across the globe, again in near real time. We're going to come to this in a bit, so I won't double run myself. It's basically a protocol, kind of like FT8. It's designed for weak signal communication, very much similar to FT8. It can pick signals up that you can virtually not hear and still decode them. It's damn slow. It actually sends the information at something like 1.2 baud, but it's got loads of error correction built into it and repetition, so it can get through. And the whole point is in the name. It's weak signal propagation reporter. You don't need a stonking great beacon transmitting 100 watts. A lot of these Whisper beacons transmit like 100 milliwatts, and yet they're still linking across the world, and you can get the information from them. Joe Taylor wrote it. It's now open source, developed by a little team of people, and as it says, it's for sending and receiving low power weak signal transmissions to test propagation paths, not baths. So again, we'll have a look at it in a bit. We'll see what the Whisper network looks like, but you can use this to see what's open and what the bands are doing and where things are. The way it works is each little station sends and receives on a schedule that's synchronized between them all. Every station sends its call sign, its grid locator and its transmitter power. The receiver, as I said, is a damn hot thing. It's about as good as FT8. It can really fish the signals out of the noise. And stations that are running a Whisper entity that have internet access are automatically uploading all of their results to the internet, and it goes into a database called WhisperNet, which links to a website with a map. You've heard this before. Again, another really useful facility. They're hosted by amateur radio operators like us worldwide. Lawrence got one, but he's broke it and he can't figure out how to make it work again. But they're not difficult to build. You know, you can use a computer and your transceiver, but people can make them out of these little chipset things. You can even make one out of a Raspberry Pi. You know, it's not something that needs to sort of take over your life. You can build it, and as long as you've got an aerial somewhere to attach it to that's not, and you're not going to destroy it when you transmit on something else, you can set up a Whisper entity and just leave it going. The one thing you do need though is you do need an internet connection really, or a GPS clock, because obviously if it's synchronizing with the network, it's not going to do very well if its time sync is out. Just the same as FT8. You need a good clock for that. So that's basically Whisper, and now we're going to have the same problem again, but we got there before, so we'll get there again, don't worry about it. Right, hold that thought. Alright, so, yeah, there we go. Yeah, he always says this page cannot display Google Maps correctly, but I really don't care.
Not learned to read yet.
No, so that's WhisperNet right now. You can create a user login which lets you go in and do filters and various stuff. But basically it's showing you all the different stations that are active, which paths are open between which ones, the frequencies that are in use, You can go in, you can, oh goodness, what about this one here? So it tells us where he is, what his transmitter power is, etc. If we scroll down, you then have stuff at the bottom here where you can put filters in, and you can clear that map down, so you can look for a particular whisper entity in a certain country that you're interested in. You can change the band, you can change stuff basically to narrow it down to what you're actually interested in being able to view. But again, this is near real time. So if we watch this for long enough, we'll see it change, you'll see other paths coming up. So right now, as you might expect, there seems to be a bit of an opening into North America. Australia's not bad actually, unusually for this time of day. New Zealand's possible. I'm interested in that one down there. Is there somebody on the South Pole or something?
Yeah.
Antarctica, that's quite interesting. But you can use this to watch sort of what's happening. We can zoom in a bit, drag the map, see what's happening. Europe's probably not a good place to look, but so you get the idea. But this will show you what's happening in terms of propagation across the world. There's a couple down there, look. Interested. Who's that?
That's the top of the South America, is it?
No, we're not seeing any lines there. So, but okay, so that's WhisperNet. But you might be thinking, okay, you know, it's sort of academically interesting. But the beauty of the thing is, of course, is that again, just like Reverse Beacon Network, all this is being stored in a database. So you can go back on that page, you can look at historical trends and activity. You can look at a particular event that happened in a sunspot cycle or something, and you can study what effect that had on the propagation. So if you're into learning about stuff like that, there's just bucket loads of information in there. Now let's see if this works. Now of course it's not going to. Let me get rid of that. I have to click back on here, I think. Yeah, there we go. You remember flight MH370? The
Yeah.
airline
Yeah.
that disappeared?
Yeah.
Well, this chap, Richard Godfrey, he actually went on and he analysed historical whisper data, and he came up with this different thing. He discovered that there were, as he says, 518 unique transmission paths across the area of interest where they were looking for the aircraft. And by correlating the whisper data with the satellite data, he actually managed to come up with this thing saying it flew in circles for around 22 minutes in an area 150 miles off the coast before it vanished forever. They still didn't find the thing, but it narrowed down the search area, and he was actually able to use this data and the fact that, you know, at that particular time on that particular date, weird things happened on those paths, probably reflections from the aircraft or something,
Yeah.
bringing up paths that shouldn't normally be there. And he did a study on that data. So, you know, there's all sorts of stuff in this data that's being gathered by this system, and it's all being done by radio amateurs. So, polish your medal. We're doing a service to the world here.
Well, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and here's a final one for you. PSK Reporter, for those of you that like FT8. For those of you that don't like FT8, or, well, I've got nothing to say because you don't like it, but for those who haven't really played with FT8, and I know this was something people were asking and saying, can we have an FT8 demo? Well, we did do an FT8 demo here,
Yeah.
but the problem was the aerial was rubbish at the time and we really couldn't work anything. But once we get the aerial fixed, which will be real soon now, straight after the meeting probably, I'll be able to bring the rig in again, and we could do some live FT8 if you're interested in that, and you'll be able to see this in action. Because there's a thing called PSK Reporter, which is very similar to the other stuff we've talked about. It shows, again, in near real time, where users of FT8 and the other digital modes are actually being heard across the world and how strong they are. So not only can you look at where you were being heard, but you can see where other people were being heard, and again, it's going into a database so you can look up past things. It's as simple as ticking a box in your software and it reports back to the internet. But what it's actually reporting is, if you've ever done any FT8, you'll know that you have a decode window, and everything basically that your receiver is receiving, even if it's people you're not working, if they're working somebody else but you can hear them, your software's picking them up. Well, it's spotting that to the internet and saying G4FZP in Bury in England heard this Swedish station. So that Swedish station can then go on and go, I wonder if anybody heard, he heard me. Even if you're not working them, even if it's just on clocking away in the background while you're soldering something on a board, it's helping the internet to build up a picture of who can be heard where and under what circumstances and what signal report they get. You query your own call sign, of course. You can look at where you were heard. Again, I've called CQ on FT8, nobody's listened to me. Go on PSK Reporter and have a look and see if the world can hear me.
The way of spying.
Yeah.
But
So-
24 divorce, that's your problem.
We can close up with that. Yeah, don't run 400 watts like Stephen used to run. It's not necessary. Right, bear with me here. Right. So there's
What else is it?
Typical one, isn't it?
There's PSK Reporter live. If you watch it, you'll see pins sort of appearing and disappearing as different things come up. But that's basically everything that's hearing everything else on FT8 all over the world, sort of as of a few minutes ago. And again, you can filter that. You can shut it down by band, so you can just look at what's happening on 20 metres. You can put your own call sign in, so you're just looking at people that heard you, or people that heard something else, or whatever. You can go in and you can, who's that up there, for example? Tells me where he is. He's on the 15 metre band right now. We can show everybody that he could hear, filter on him. It's a bit slow, but it'll get there. There you go. So that's now showing you everything that his station has picked up. And obviously you can do that with your own call sign and stuff. You can see at the bottom there, that thing, that reception reports, 39 million, is it? I don't know how many that is, but it's clocking away. So bear with it if it takes a few seconds to update, because it's doing a lot of work. If we attempt to scroll down, oh no, it's up here actually on here. So you can change the band, signal reports received by call sign, modes, how long ago. If I put my call sign in, you won't see anything.
Put mine in.
Yeah, and notice actually PSK Reporter, look, there's even 4 people on 10 gigahertz running FT8. So it literally is on all bands. If you're doing FT8 on 2 meters, for example, it'll show you where you've been heard. You won't get worldwide on there, but
It's on 4 meters.
Yeah.
3 and 4.
what does it say?
It's just to the right way it was.
3 on 4 meters, let's see. It's a Spanish station. OK2. Yeah. Nothing in the UK by the looks of it. M's, is that? No, it's IW. So, yeah, but again, if you're into digital, yet another facility for you to play with. So we covered a few different things there, from ordinary beacons, using things that aren't beacons, reverse beacon network, whisper beacons, the American beacon I always get the acronym wrong. That one, WXCDF or whatever it's called. PSK Reporter if you're into digital. There's an awful lot of stuff out there, we've only scratched the surface. But hopefully it's whetted your appetite.
Definitely.
You can look up this stuff, look at the slides on the website when Jim gets them put on. and you'll be able to pick up those web addresses off those slides and then go and look at this yourself and perhaps try using it. Have a look about, and you'll be amazed what you can do. It's quite interesting, semi-addictive when you get at it. So, apart from the fact that the slideshow is now broken, let me just get it back. Oh, come here. Yeah. Get rid of you off there. Get my mouse back on the right screen. There you go.
Finish.
So, there you go, beacons and propagation aids.
Thank you very much, Alan.
Any questions?
Well, it was very enjoyable, very good, very informative.
Good.
Just have to play about with it now, and how we do it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing, go muck about with it.
Yeah.
Let's get the aerial fix, we can actually do it.
Yeah, we could do some from here, yeah. But, go on, Alan.
One thing I've seen on YouTube is amateurs with a handheld on winter or somewhere, and they transmit to themselves to their own base,
Yeah,
and they can get some sort of response from there. How do they do that? Do they have some sort of, computer program to do it? I know it's independent of beacons, but it's sort of, he's testing the limits of the transmission on his handheld, that sort of thing.
yeah.
How would they do that? Is it some sort of
You have to record it.
homemade thing that they've got?
Yeah, they're either using some sort of homemade responder,
Yeah.
like a repeater but not a repeater, or they may be using APRS to do it.
Oh,
And I've got another talk coming up on APRS. If you're going, what's APRS? Hold that thought. We'll cover that as well.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
So the reverse beacons, are they all amateurs? So the spotters are all amateurs?